Well, hello everyone. Welcome to What's Your Story? And this is episode 3. And I'll be talking today about fear or love. And in 1 John 4:14, it talks about and tells us that his perfect love drives out all fear. And I think I touched on this in the first 2 episodes, but I want to share some of my background, some of my story. A lot of what we do is with mental health and suicide prevention. And in order to do that, we talk a lot about dreams. And as you can see behind me, that's the beginning of our movie teaser for Janice's story. We have her biography in color. It's a collector's edition. And we have it out now that people that want to read the story and help us support the raising of funds for the movie. This is the original. It's in black and white, and I released it in 2011. This one I released last summer, and it will be available until we raise enough funds for the movie, and then I'll come out with a different version and take this one out of print. And I did that so that anybody that helps us with the movie, helps spread the word, you can get something of value. Maybe it'll be a collector's item one day. So, but what I want to talk to you today is about kind of how I got here. I was born in 1962, and my grandfather and grandmother had an old country store. And so about at the age of 3 or 4, somewhere in there, my dad left, and we went to stay with them for a while with my mom. And that started a whole series of things. Number one was divorce. And that's never good on a child. And I think for years, I questioned myself, was it me? I was the oldest. It was my brother and I. He was a year and a half younger than I am. And, there's just a lot of things that children go to. And I know there's many people out there that are from broken homes. And a few years later, my mom remarried, and we lived further out in the country, about 15 miles away from Yoakum, in between Yoakum and Shiner, Texas. And at that point, we had 4 ranches. We learned how to hunt, fish. Later on, I learned how to shoot a bow. And that was my paradise. That was, I guess, if you will, my sanity growing up. I could grab the gun, grab the rod and reel, and go down to the ponds or the running creek and fish. Just look at all the birds, listen to their songs. And, I needed that time, which is interesting now. We're here in the woodlands, and it's like living in a forest, even though we're in a big city. So I really feel like I'm home again. But when I was about probably 4 or 5, we used to have this bigger kid that came out to the country store. They served beer, and my grandfather, he played the accordion, and sometimes others would come and they would play together and sing. And so the kids, we'd go outside, we'd play, and we had this older kid that he just liked to bully us, my brother and I, but for some reason he particularly didn't like me. And so we had this 55-gallon barrel, and we like to get up on it, roll it, stand on it when it's on its side and roll it. And then, he said, well, why don't y'all get in it and I'll roll it for you. Well, that worked for a while, but then he wanted us to get in head first. And what he would do is he would flip that barrel up on top of us and then sit on it, mainly me. At least that's what I remember. And there was another time the store was next to a pond, and my uncle was out in the water, and it had a little diving board on it. And he told me, he said, why don't you crawl up there and jump off and I'll catch you. And he missed me, and I went underwater. And that was the last time I got back in the water. So as you can tell, I had a really bad fear of the dark, being trapped in that barrel, a fear of heights because I was up high when I jumped, and a fear of water. And it took me a long time before I learned how to swim. And even now, I don't like to swim underwater. I don't like to swim that much. I don't find it as fun. On the heights, We've been up in Colorado Springs, up in the mountains, getting next to a cliff, or on some of the rides, like in San Antonio at Fiesta, Texas, or SeaWorld. And I've gone on all of them, the roller coasters, because I needed to overcome that fear. But it took a long time coming through that. Now, some things that happened in my childhood, and I just want to throw these out there. My cousin had come over one day, and he had this mini bike, and he devised this plan of tying our wagon onto the back of his mini bike. And my brother and I got on, and he pulled us down the road, going to pull us to the house. And about halfway, he stopped. But how many of you know the wagon kept going, and it pulled the handle to the side and flipped us off. I ended up hitting my head on the asphalt and, opening up a chunk in my head. And so this was the first head injury I had. The second injury came when I was probably around 12 or 13 years old. We used to ride the horses and with my neighbors and stuff. One of them had a Shetland, and the other one had a nice quarter horse, and ours were, ranch horses. And well, we thought, hey, it'd be cool to go up in the pasture with all the other horses that didn't have saddles on. And if you have ever been around horses, that's the last thing to do. And all I remember of that day is waking up and having amnesia about it, and I fell into some cactus. So I'm thinking I might have had a concussion back then. But, in the 60s and the 70s, we didn't have a lot of stuff going on. The doctors and all that didn't know a lot of stuff either. But when I was 20, I went out and I was going to buy this motorcycle. It was a Honda 550. It was a 4-cylinder. And I think it was a 1980 model, and this would have been 1982. And so I went by the house and stopped, and my sister decided she wanted to go. She was 11 at the time. And so I gave her my helmet. Then I got on the highway, and it was just a short stretch. It was 45 miles an hour to this intersection, and this car took a left in front of me, and I told my sister to hold on, and I held the bike up because I knew if I laid it down, that was it. So I hit the brakes, and the last thing I remember is waking up on the asphalt on my back. There were 2 ambulances there. My sister was already in the back of one. And I was so concerned about her, the adrenaline rushing. They wanted to put me in a separate ambulance. I said, no, I've got to sit next to I've got to be in the same ambulance as my sister. And so I got up, and I had a broken nose, and I walked all the way to the ambulance on a broken knee, sat in the front of that ambulance all the way to the hospital. And that's when I found out what, the adrenaline can do, when you're in that state of shock. So I'm thinking, I probably had a concussion then too. But I say all that to bring this up because in October of 2019, I was in a car wreck in a Costco parking lot. The car was only going 20 miles an hour at the max. And I was going up, I was looking this way to see if anybody was at that stop sign because I'd already looked that way. And as I turned this way, the car that I didn't see approaching ran that stop sign, and we hit corner to corner. And so my head went down like this. No airbags, I didn't even hit anything with my head. But I got double vision from that, and they said it was a mild concussion. I kind of, I don't know about that if I accept that diagnosis. But I would be talking to somebody, and about mid-sentence, I'd lose my train of thought, and I couldn't get it back. And it was embarrassing, but I was like, Lord, what's going on with my mind? And I wrote a song on that called I've Got to Breathe. It's like, where did I go? And it took about 3 months of recovery for my eyesight, and I still struggle with it sometimes, especially around allergies. And but my memory I've gotten back, but I've noticed that the songs that I wrote, during that year or two after the injury, I've had a hard time memorizing. Now my memory seems to be doing a lot better now, but it's why I literally play with my pad on top of my keyboard stand. And I write my music in about 6 or 7 different keys, and I use minors and major chords all the time. So, there's a lot there, but I do all my own music. I do all my own performance tracks. I write my drum score out, and then I program it in note by note into my keyboard, and then I record it all. So I play with pre-recorded tracks, except for the instrument I'm playing, either the guitar or the keyboard, and then I sing. So, I just want to say that concussions matter. If you have a concussion, check things out. But what all of this did was it set up fear inside of me. It affected my driving at night for a while. I'd have to drive more during the day. I was driving for Lyft at the time in Colorado Springs, and then San Antonio, now here in Houston. And so don't take that stuff lightly. If you have a head injury, get checked out. But, sometimes in our early years, people can tell us things that aren't true. And maybe it's they want to protect us. Maybe they don't even want us to do those things. But it can affect us the rest of our life, because here we are, fresh out of the womb, just a few years, and we don't know any better. And so I had this young lady in my car yesterday who's been told she can't make a living writing music, singing, playing the guitar and the piano. And I told her that's not necessarily so. See, I was told that I couldn't even carry a tune when I was a kid. And that creates a lot of fear inside when you go to try to sing. You sing your favorite songs, and the whole time you're going, I hope nobody hears me, because I guess I can't carry a tune. And if you don't have confidence when you're singing, it's like playing a trumpet. If you don't blow enough air through it, it's flat and off key. So it's like that with our vocal cords. You've got to be confident, and you've got to project, and you've got to let your vocals come out. So I struggled with that until mainly in 2016, I was at a competition out in Orlando, Florida, in front of 2,000 people and 100 agents, including Nate Butler with America's Got Talent, VH1, and all these acting agents and dance agents. And I got up there and I was doing a bread song, and it was Everything I Own. And there's a little riff in there on the guitar, and I had practiced and practiced. The only problem was my fingers were shaking so much, I messed it up. And on my next act, I played the keyboard and I played one of my songs, so it came out a lot better. But being in front of that crowd, I can get in front of other places now, like here at the hotel where tonight will be my 43rd show, and I'm not nervous at all. I'm in my groove, I'm up there, I've got the keyboard, I've got the guitar next to me, and I just start playing. I start, telling stories, because I see the hearts out there. I see the people, all of us have been through something here lately, and we need to be there for each other. We need to help each other. I've been through 2 failed marriages, and after the second marriage, I even had suicidal thoughts. But it's like, Lord, you got to take me out of here. I messed up financially. Evidently, I'm no good at marriage, and my kids, and I wasn't able to see them much. Part of that was my fault. Part of it was other things that were going on. I was a mental case. And for 3 years, I lived close to and even in this church in San Antonio just to stay sane. They helped me so much in prayer. I ran the sound. I was there all the time. I was in prayer every morning for the prayer meetings. I was in worship. I learned how to play the piano there. And so sometimes we go through these times where we need outside help, where, if you will, you get broken down to nothing so that the Lord can rebuild you. And so that scripture, perfect love drives out all fear, is real. I had these places inside of me, I grew up in so much fear. And when I saw that scripture, I said, Lord, please bring in your fear to these areas. And he would bring them up one by one, and I'm all shook when they come up. But he said, I'm here. I'll come in and with my love. Now you're going to have to face it. You're going to have to walk through it again. Being around somebody that's a bully or that has rage, and I'm just shaking. And we were out in California in 2016, and we were put in close contact with a guy that, wow, and we had to stay there. We couldn't leave. We were staying there, but the Lord did something inside of me. He took what was in me, and I stood up. And so it was his love, though. It was his love pouring through me. And it changes relationships. Janice and I have been married 27 years now. But when we got married, she would say things, and it would bring back old memories to one of the other two marriages, and I thought she was gone. And all of that stuff would come up again. Lord, please, bring your perfect love into these areas. He did, and I got stronger. I became more mature. I've done so many things in my life, not having, I guess, that good family life, and I just never seemed to have that foundation. And it's like the music. My uncle used to be in a country western band. He was the lead singer. And one night down in Corpus Christi, he let me get up on the stage behind the drummer, and I felt that music, and I was like, oh wow, this is cool. And I had played drums in the drum set in high school. I played every percussion instrument there was. And I was like, oh. And then when I was probably around 8 years old, he actually let me borrow his Fender Telecaster and try to learn how to play. And I play these guitar chords and all this. And I wanted to do music, but it was slammed down. We lived out in the country, and when we moved to town, I was able to take band in high school. So I did, and I learned music theory. And then it kind of just went away. I went on with life after graduating. Briefly went into the Air Force for a month. Got out on a medical discharge, honorable discharge. And I was working for a grocery store, H&B Grocery, here in Texas. And I thought, well, I have a promising career here until I had a back injury, and then that was over. Between Janice and I, we can build a house. We've got all the skills. I've done management, I've done sales, just always looking for that one thing that was mine to do. I've even done antique auto restoration with my uncle. Yes, the same one that was in the band. And, but none of it stuck. And then at the age of 27, I started writing music. I bought a 12-string guitar to help a friend of mine lead praise and worship for our prayer group. And within a week or two, I was starting to get lyrics. I was starting to write new songs. And every week they were asking me, hey, you got a new song? Because I was writing 1 or 2 songs a week at that point. It was just a gift, and it came. But it took me years to get my voice right. I would sing that song, I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice. Make it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. And it was my prayer, it was my yearning to Him. Please change my voice so that I can sing your songs and that it would be pleasing in the sight of others. And it's taken years, but He's done it. I've written over 400 songs now. I've got 3 albums out. I'm working on a romantic album now to help encourage couples to remember why they got together. What were the things they did that were fun? And keep that fire rekindled, because we all go through storms. And if we can remember those times and be there for each other, we can make it. And so I'm running out of time here. So I want you to remember that every place you have fear, ask the Lord to come in with his love. He'll walk you through it. You won't be alone, and he'll help guide you through it. And so, this is a part of my story that I can share. What's your story? What parts can you share? In the last episode, I talked to you about outlining the story. It's kind of like the table of contents I did in Janice's biography here. And you have the main chapters, and then you can have some sub-chapters or subheadings. And so be sure to listen to that. I'm putting all these on Locals. It's a subscription-based community page. And this episode is the first one that will require a subscription of $5 a month to be able to post or leave a comment. The first 2 episodes were free. You can post on there if you'd like. If you have questions, if you have things you want me to talk about in episodes coming up, I'm going to be doing a lot of different teachings and sharing on different subjects, even music. And then for an extra amount, you can communicate with me directly. But it's about sharing, because we give away so much, and I'm having to work so much just to support ourselves. So I'm taking some of what I have to share and asking for some help so that we can pay our expenses and continue to do what we're doing with the tour and the funding of her movie. And I want to leave you with this movie teaser. You can go to my website, joseph-james.net, or Janice's website, her story, which we have 7 videos of her testimony on there. You can get the book on Kindle, the black and white version. You can get the color version. You can go to Barnes & Noble, to Amazon. But her movie teaser is also there. We have links to the GoFundMe if you want to help us with the GoFundMe. For $35 on the GoFundMe, you can get this book. For $100, we'll autograph it and we'll number it. So it's going to have its own unique number. And then we have spots for advertising in the movie credits and on the website. That's your sponsor, and we'll put your information out there for $1,000. And then for $10,000, if you want to invest in the movie and the movie does well, you can make some money from that. We just want to bless everybody that's helping us. We're creating a 5 million person fan base, and we're raising $5 million for the movie so that we can get it done correctly. We're going to have probably some CGI there, the supernatural stuff that happened in her life. And so it's going to be probably a mature audience because of all the trauma that she went through. And we'll see what happens. I hope it's in the same quality as The Passion of the Christ that Mel Gibson did. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with the movie teaser. God bless you, and I'll be working on and releasing episode 4 next week. Thank you so much for your help. And if you have a venue that you would like us to come to anywhere around the country next year, please reach out to us on those 2 websites or Facebook, Locals. We're on Rumble, YouTube. My music is on all the streaming. And get ready for my 4th album. It's going to be fun. The people here at the hotel love the music, and I hope you do too. God bless you. Have a great one.
This is where it all began and almost ended so very tragically. Rewind the clock back to April 11, 1960. A baby girl was born in the Nix Hospital here in downtown San Antonio, Texas. I was that baby girl, and my name is Janice Turner Hartman. This is my story. I blazed a trail for women in San Antonio in the late 70s, becoming the first woman electrician and printer in the city. It was a very difficult journey, but I was determined, and just when I thought I had everything going well and on track, my life almost ended abruptly. That fateful day, August 12th, 1983, almost ended my life immediately. But with miraculous intervention, I was spared and the healing began. However, unknown to me at the time, it only set up a series of events over the next 7 years that would cause the doctors to give up all hope of survival and issue my sentence of death. 38 surgeries, 7 years in and out of mental hospitals, numerous suicide attempts, gender issues, shock treatments, hallucinations, and then the final prognosis. They put me in a care home to comfortably live out the few remaining days I had, mostly in a catatonic state. I would sometimes burn my arm with my cigarette to just make sure I was still alive. But then, on that glorious day, on the front porch of that care home, the miracle started, and I found that my life was really only just beginning. I was destined for life.